Chapter 30-40, The Grand Finale 7, Bang! Carelessly, a sudden strike managed to hit him and sent him flying in the air. Coincidentally, he crashed his back against the rock that was securing the dark water prison, and bounced off. The man lost consciousness momentarily due to the internal injury that he suffered. Once he shook off the pain, he tried hard to suppress the urge to vomit blood, and leaped backward to buy him some time. Nevertheless, the demon closed in on him with dim streaks of 7-colored rays seen flickering on her palm. Fan Qianshi, you are going to be my puppet. Threatened, Fan Qianshi continued to back off until he had his back flatly on the stone that locked Gu Shijiu and Di Fui away. The demon could not see what was going on behind his back, but Gu Shijiu could see everything up close. Fan Qianshi took the opportunity to perform a spell on his fingertip, enhanced with a drop of his blood. He then hit the wizardry barrier with the spell. Gu Shijiu had no idea what he was going to do, but she realized that the boiling dark water surged to a record-high temperature, almost bursting Di Fui's protective layer of wizardry barrier. Both of them were thrown off balance and in a terrible shock. However, it was at that time that Gu Shijiu could even feel a mysterious force pulling her out. Was he trying to get her killed as well? She gave Fan Qianshi a look of disgust, but she could only see his back. Shijiu, ignore him. Keep going. Di Fui's reminder echoed in Gu Zijia's ears. Determined, she continued to work on her tasks. Fan Qianshi's face was filled with horror as he realized his spell did not work. The spell that he had just used was intended to pull Gu Shijiu out of the prison, before the barrier was further fortified. He did not expect it to fail as it had never failed him before. The man decided to try again, seemingly not as concerned about the demon attacking him, as with getting Gu Shijiu out. With another drop of blood, he cast the spell again, only to see it fail again. Are you trying to release her? The demon asked in a wicked and intimidating tone. Did your spell just fail? Haha. Fan Qianshi, I knew that you would never let her go. The demon said with an air of complacency. You have done something to the dark water prison, haven't you? Fan Qianshi was certain about his assumption. Have you forgotten that I am an expert in setting wizardry barriers as well? I took some time to study it and made a slight alteration. It now has an extra feature. It seemed that the fight was a sure win for her, so she was not in a hurry to defeat Fan Qianshi. Like a proud predator, she decided to provoke her prey in an unkind way. Would you like to know what the extra feature is? Fan Qianshi did not answer, but the demon insisted that he needed to know. I made it such that the soul of a lady will be trapped forever, but the soul of a man can escape. He had nothing more to say. Meanwhile, the demon threw a glance at the dark water prison where Di Fui was trapped, but the entire wizardry barrier was surrounded by a compact mass of skeletons to the point where she could not see him. The demon had no idea what the two prisoners were currently up to inside. She looked back at Fan Qianshi's terrified expression, and was delighted. When I am done with you, I will get Di Fui out of the prison. He is the only one that I truly love, so I will not let him wither away in that horrible place. We shall keep each other company until the end of time. She was soft-spoken, but what came out of her mouth was brutally savage. However, you do not have to worry, Qianshi. Even when he is freed, I will still keep you alive. It will be a pleasure for you to watch as we devote ourselves to one another. Fan Qianshi was at a complete loss of words. His facial expression was filled with rage as he said with gritted teeth, I underestimated you. Chapter 30-41. The Grand Finale 8. Although they used to be on the same team, they did not see each other very frequently. They only met once every few centuries. Every time Fan Qianshi came to visit, the demon would always do everything as he said, carefully and submissively. She did not seem like much of a thinker. Back then, he still had some doubts over the demon's unquestionable submission. Sometimes, he would linger around longer to observe her behavior, to make sure that her loyalty was real. She was profoundly immoral and wicked, but the way she behaved around him was quite innocent, and sometimes silly. Never had he thought that she had been scheming to bring about the collapse of his master plan. At this point in the dramatic exchange, Gu Shijiu and Di Fui found themselves looking at one another in dismay. Gu Shijiu teased him with half a smile. She wants to get you away so that you can spend a lifetime together with her. How sweet is that? Di Fui rubbed her hair and repeated her words with a tender voice. He wants to get you away so that you can spend a lifetime together with him. How sweet is that? The result is clear now. The demon has won the fight, which means that you are free to go, Gu Shijie objected. Di Fui then planted a swift kiss on her soft lips and proudly said, "Why should we need their help? We can get out of here on our own." Without wasting time, he then used his fingers to perform a very complicated series of spells. "Break it," he called out loud with full authority. All the preparations were already done. With the final set of spells being cast, all he needed was a small activation to trigger a series of chain effects that would blast them through the barrier. After a loud bang, the dark water prison, which was initially known to be invincible, was successfully breached. A surge of dark water escaped through the hole and transformed immediately into ferocious-looking spirits. They then ran amok with bare fangs and brandishing claws. Fan Qianshi was shocked, and so was the demon. In fact, even Di Fui did not see this coming. "Damn it!" Gu Shijie cursed. The resentful spirits attacked in a compact mass, with an intensity that clouded the sun. It was a terrifying sight, even for Gu Shijie. Di Fui quickly reacted by setting up another wizardry barrier around the boulder to block the spirits from swarming out. However, the barrier was not as powerful as the one that had been initially set by the demon and Fan Qianshi, so it did not work. As a piece of tape on a hissing balloon, the barrier could be seen shaking due to the powerful impact from the resentful spirits that were desperate to break free. It seemed so unstable that it could break at any time. To make matters worse, the ones that had already escaped from the prison posed real threats to Di Fui's safety. They never stopped attacking him, thus making the situation even more dangerous. There were millions of resentful spirits in the dark water prison. Some of them used to be powerful people when they were alive. In the form of evil spirits, their power remained. And in the resentment they carried, revenge was what they sought. The compact army of the dead would surely cause great and irreparable damage to the living world. It was not only the desert that would crumble, but the entire world that they knew. Fan Qianshi was the one who came up with the dark water prison, so he should be the one to look for a solution. Gu Shijie clasped his collar and furiously demanded, "Bastard, look at what you have done. Seal the confinement immediately." She sounded exactly like a master who was reprimanding her disciple. Dumbfounded, Fan Qianshi found it hard to believe that she was treating her like a misbehaved disciple. He grasped her by the wrist and said, "Have you recalled everything?" Gu Shijie disregarded the pain on her wrist as his priority was for him to sort out the evil spirits. "No more nonsense. Pull it together now." Desperately, she pulled his hand away and dragged him to the boulder. Before Fan Qianshi could answer anything, the demon's laughter could be heard echoing in the air. "Impressive, both of you. I did not expect that you would be able to put a hole through the confinement. However, you should know that the gap can no longer be sealed once the barrier is breached. Now, I can use these evil spirits as I please. They will be my strongest army in conquering the 6 worlds." Chapter 3042. The Grand Finale 9. Gu Shijie almost wanted to swear at the demon. Why did everyone want to control the 6 realms so badly? Her former apprentice was so adamant about doing so, and now, her inner demon also wanted the same. It was strange. She herself had never had this thought. How could this demon come out with this idea? Perhaps it was because the demon was the master of the desert. Therefore, these grievances were really afraid of her. They dared not attack her and only went after Di Fui, Fan Qianshi, and Gu Shijie. A wizardry barrier surrounded Di Fui's body, so he was all right. Nevertheless, Gu Shijie was seriously injured, and her skill was currently the weakest among them. When she saw hundreds of grievances rushing over, she was about to pull out her sword, but Fan Qianshi suddenly pulled her behind him. He raised his hand and attacked the grievances away. Then, he quickly created a wizardry barrier around them. Before they had time to talk, there was a loud bang from the ground. A pink shell drilled out from the ground and said, "Mother, I want to die." Before it finished its sentence, it shouted, "What are these? Why are there so many grievances?" It slammed its shell shut at once as it saw the grievances rush towards its shell. They attacked its shell to the point where it looked like a bumpy boat passing over a large wave. Muscle. Luwu. Long sigh. Gu Zijia's eyes were sharp. In fact, when the mussel opened its shell, she saw there was a lady behind them, as well as an animal that looked like a black snake. However, as the mussel closed its shell too fast, she did not see the appearance of the black snake clearly. Although the shell of the mussel was thick and strong, it was undoubtedly impossible to defend against the attacks from so many grievances. After a moment, they heard the screams of the mussel. "It's over. It hurts. My shell is damaged. It's going to break." Gu Shijie was speechless. Fan Qianshi immediately rushed forward in the wizardry barrier to chase away the grievances that had been attacking the big mussel's shell, and then got it into the barrier. The barrier he made was neither too big nor too small. It was about the size of a room. At the moment, the mussel itself accounted for most of the space. It opened its shell in shock. Lu Wu, Long Sai and Huayan jumped out of its shell one by one. And finally, the black snake glided out slowly, and then it shook and changed its appearance. Not only did horns grow on its head, but a small lantern also emerged. It was the black candle dragon. These people and beasts who would never associate with one another, so Gu Shijie was stunned. Before she could react, the big mussel had already plunged to her feet, using its shell to clip her skirt. "Master, how did you become like this? Are you seriously injured? Which bastard hurt you? Hoo, you look so ugly." Gu Shijie was speechless for a moment. It did not take long for Lu Wu to rush over and turned into its human form. It was now a 12-year-old boy that looked particularly furious. "Master, which bastard hurt you like this? Tell Lu Wu. Lu Wu will get revenge for you." Meanwhile, Long Sai stepped forward and wanted to diagnose her pulse. "Shijie, let me check on you." At the same time, the black candle dragon raced forward to the front of Fan Qianshi. It looked up at the whistling spirit outside the barrier and said, "What is going on?" Huayan stood in a corner, and her eyes swept over to Fan Qianshi. She paused for a moment before walking over to him. "Master." Long Sai, on the other side, became a little stiff. He watched Huayan as she approached Fan Qianshi, but the lady did not look back at him. Chapter 3043. The Grand Finale 10. The only way to describe the current situation was chaotic. Fortunately, the mussel had a quick mouth, so it was able to convey the entire situation outside in a matter of minutes. It turned out that when things got out of control, the mussel had been swept away by a massive vortex from the desert. That vortex seemed to shatter everything into dust and absorb the mussel into its grasp. Inside, it happened to meet Long Sai and Huayan. Huayan and Long Sai teamed up to set up a wizardry barrier to protect the people and the beasts who got sucked in. But they could not find a way to escape. Meanwhile, they watched the other people who got caught turn into dust. Everything had happened in less than half a minute, and by then, the wizardry barrier that was supporting them seemed to be in jeopardy. Just when it was about to burst, a candle dragon came into the whirlpool. This candle dragon immediately protected itself using its own wizardry barrier, but continued to roll around inside. Moments later, they found themselves inside the desert. At that time, the candle dragon was too tired to move and lay on the ground. Long Sai and Huayan were also exhausted and could barely move. In the desert, the howling winds like knives while the sand was like bullets. The pain was getting unbearable, and there was no place to hide here. Therefore, the mussel protected everyone in its shell, and then performed the ground drilling technique. That was how this group of people and creatures turned up together over here. The grievances outside the wizardry barrier roared continuously during the story. They looked frightening and dangerous. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside the wizardry barrier was strange. Long Sai, the mussel, and Lu Wu kept their guard up at the sight of Fan Qianshi. However, Huayan and the Black Candle Dragon were very close to Fan Qianshi. Apparently, one was his subordinate, and the other was his pet. Fan Qianshi frowned as he spoke to Huayan very bluntly. "Bitch, who asked you to come? I told you to leave me alone." Huayan looked down at the ground in disappointment. Next, Fan Qianshi looked at Long Sai. The man's gaze had already fallen on Huayan as his handsome face turned green. Long Sai was undoubtedly intelligent. When he saw the interaction between Hua Yan and Fan Qianshi, he could guess Hua Yan's true identity. He coldly said, "You are Wu Yan." Hua Yan did not deny. Yes. Long Sai did not say anything more. He wanted to ask some questions like, "Is he the one who sent you? And what did you want to get from me this time?" However, he never got an answer in the past, so he did not bother. He just sighed in disappointment as he looked at Hua Yan coldly. Fan Qianshi frowned as his eyes looked sharply at Long Sai. "What are you thinking about now? Wu Yan went to you because she likes you. I did not send her." Long Sai looked back at him and sneered. However, he did not say anything. Obviously, he did not believe it at all. Furthermore, his feelings toward Fan Qianshi were actually very complicated. He was cloned from the body cells of Fan Qianshi when he reincarnated as Long Fan. In fact, he was Long Sai's father for several years. Before Long Sai knew that he was a clone, he thought that Long Fan was his father. The man had treated him ruthlessly. However, it was undeniable that he taught him a lot of skills. Whether it was medical skills or martial arts, they were all taught to him by Long Fan. Later, Long Sai died and received a new body. Theoretically, he was no longer a clone and was raised by real parents. However, his appearance was not much different from his previous life. Since then, he always wondered if he was still carrying Long Fan's genes. Back in the Starry Crescent Land, Long Fan manipulated him like a chess piece and almost ended his life while trying to get even with Di Fui and Gu Shijiu. Chapter 3044. The Grand Finale 11. The last incident made Long Sai resent him, but also made him rather confused about himself. If it were possible, he did not want to see Fan Qianshi ever again. Therefore, it was rather confusing to him that the man refused to let him go until today, and had to send Wu Yan undercover to monitor him. What did he want from him this time? What other role did he have in Fan Qianshi's grand scheme? Long Sai just came into the desert, so he was still very confused. The whistling spirits outside the barrier made him scared, and he realized that his personal emotions should be insignificant at this time. He looked around to analyze the scene, and suddenly, his pupils shrunk. Through the dense whistling grievances, he saw Di Fui not too far away. He also saw Gu Zijia's inner demon. Di Fui was struggling to support a barrier that he placed on a large stone. From the rock's crevices, there was black water spitting out from time to time. As the water came out, it happened to turn into evil spirits almost instantaneously. Apparently, this was the source of the evil grievances in the area. At this time, the demonized Gu Shijiu was very close to Di Fui. "Fui, you don't have to tire yourself over this matter. You cannot stop it. They will all come out and become my established army." She opened her arms and flew around the place as if to welcome her new army members. The grievances did not bite her but danced along with the movement of her sleeves. Then she turned her head and looked at Gu Shijiu. I did not want to seal her away for a long time. In fact, she would have disintegrated in 3 years. The prison would have also lost its structural integrity, and the grievances would have become my army. Alas, my army's strength is lower than I had expected because they did not get the chance to feast on her. Although she was using Gu Zijia's body, the tone of her speech was very different. It was a lot sweeter than Gu Zijia's normal voice, but sounded cruel and cold. Meanwhile, Di Fui's face appeared pale. He knew in his heart that he could not stop it with his current abilities. Once these grievances broke through the barrier, they would swallow the whole world. Typically with these sorts of grievances, they would only multiply after being attacked. The only way to get rid of them was to purify them. Perhaps, the only way to do so was to restore his identity as the master of the heavenly law. Gu Shijiu seemed to have thought of this as well. She stared at Fan Qianshi angrily and said, "Fan Qianshi, are you just going to stand there and watch? Do you want the 6 realms to be destroyed? Didn't you want to be the master of the 6 realms? If you let this calamity happen, how can you rule the 6 worlds?" Fan Qianshi bit his lips tightly after hearing her out. He looked at the roaring grievances outside and suddenly laughed. "What does it matter to me if the 6 realms are destroyed? Let it be. Let it be destroyed." At that time, Di Fui had given up on holding the barrier. If Fan Qianshi killed Di Fui, he would only restore him as the master of the heavenly law in advance. Nevertheless, the 6 realms still belonged to him. As for Gu Shijie, from the beginning to the end, she still loved Di Fui, and eventually, she would always belong to Di Fui. There was never a place for him in her heart, and he could not get rid of her. He knew that she was heartless, but he just could not see her in distress. However, all his efforts in saving her ended up hurting his feelings even further. After all, she never looked upon him favorably. He had been working so hard for so many years, but he still got nothing in the end. Chapter 30-45. The Grand Finale 12. Since he was destined to be disappointed, he would rather let the world be ruined. Fan Qianqi's thoughts turned negative as he now wanted to see the world crash and burn with Di Fui exhausting all of his power as the master of the heavenly law. He suddenly approached Gu Shijie and sneered. Gu Shijie, this is the price for how you treated me in the past. You should enjoy every moment of it. Gu Shijie remained silent. She felt that the man was such a rascal. She could not help but look at Di Fui and clench her fists. The demon was now bullying Di Fui from very close proximity and laughing like an evil creature. Fui, don't you want to give up? Then, her thin and long fingers pointed at Gu Shijie. This woman does not suit you. I am the only one in this world that will be loyal to you. Do you want to watch me kill this woman? Her long finger flicked towards Gu Shijie, and all of a sudden, there were 17 or 18 blood-like shadows that were charging toward Fan Qianqi's wizardry barrier. Meanwhile, the other grievances that were pounding on the barrier noticed the blood-red shadows coming over and quickly fled. It was obvious that whatever was coming toward them was more powerful than the ones before them. These fierce grievances must have been formed from the masters who had suffered in the desert. Just one of these fierce grievances was even more potent than 1,000 typical grievances. The rigidity of the wizardry barrier was already a concern for them earlier, but now, there was a visible crack in the barrier. It seemed that it was going to be shattered at any time. The muscle was anxious. Hold up. Hold on. It quickly opened the shell and said, Everyone, come inside my shell to hide. I will take you to underground. Ha ha ha. A little muscle that thinks that it can turn the situation around? Why don't you try drilling into the ground again? Since you had drilled out before, why not try again? Every one of you has to die. No one is allowed to survive. The devil laughed as she sentenced them. Di Fui was in a hurry, and was slightly distracted by the inner demon. The barrier that he had set around the boulder had also cracked, questioning its structural integrity. The demon brought herself even closer to Di Fui now and grabbed his arm. Fui. But before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly screamed piercingly. It was exceptionally loud, and seemed to trigger the other grievances as well. Everyone was taken aback and quickly turned their attention to her. They saw a white shadow emerging out of her body as she was screaming in pain. It seemed as though both the body and the shadow were in pain at the same time. The white shadow was obviously forced out of Gu Zijie's body. It swayed in the air for a moment before landing awkwardly on the ground. It was now in the same form as the woman in white from before. Di Fui was holding Gu Zijie's body in his hand, while casting a spell to put her soul back into her body. It was evident from the reaction of the woman in white that this was completely unexpected. Coincidentally, Fan Qianqi's wizardry barrier had also been destroyed right about the same time. Fortunately, Di Fui's movements were faster than those grievances. He waved his sleeve in the direction of Gu Shijie, and her soul seemed to be pulled toward him. Her entire vision had turned black for a moment, and when she opened her eyes, she had already returned to her body. It all happened too quickly that no one had no time to react. Even the muscle still had its shell open while Lu Wu was certainly dumbstruck by what had happened. Lu Wu turned to look at Long Sai, Fan Qianshi, Hua Yan, and the black candle dragon together that were equally shocked in the shell of the muscle. Di Fui only said 2 words, ground drilling. The muscle was speechless. It was overloaded. Nevertheless, its response was still fast. It immediately closed its shell, turned around, and sneaked into the ground. In just a second, it had disappeared. Meanwhile, the demon's pretty face had turned green. She cursed angrily, "Bastards! You can't run away from me." The desert only allowed people in, so the only way they could escape was if Fan Qianshi was willing to tell them how to do so. The muscle was full of doubts. It was alright to rescue Long Sai. But why did they have to save the big bad guy? Fan Qianshi. Was Celestial Masters were practicing Buddhism now? Nonetheless, it did not have time to question Di Fui's instructions, and had to concentrate on driving them to safety. Chapter 3046. The Grand Finale 13. Inside the shell of the muscle, Di Fui closed his eyes with Gu Shizhou sat beside him. The man was exercising his inner power to get rid of the evil inside her body. The demon had used her body for quite a long time to the point where there was demonic energy immersed in her limbs. Hence, now that she was back in her own body, she still felt quite uncomfortable. Fortunately, the channeling of the evil energy out of her body did not need her to meditate, as it would not be safe for them to have to meditate now. Thinking about the situation, she asked Long Sai about the events outside of the desert. Long Sai did not hide anything from her as he revealed the calamity that had been taking place just outside the desert. Hearing the news made Gu Shizhou frown. She knew the level of ability of the people outside the barrier. If they were truly united, they certainly had the power to turn the 6 realms around. Although she had never personally seen the big array, since Di Fui designed it, it must be compelling. Theoretically, if these people worked together, they could easily seal away a hole in the sky. However, the desert seemed to be too much for them to handle. How can we break out of this evil desert? She turned to look at Fan Qianshi. Fan Qianshi closed his eyes and answered coldly, I don't know. This desert was created by you. How can you not know? When I said I don't know, it means I don't know. However, even if I know, I will never tell you. Fan Qianshi still spoke coldly to them. Fan Qianshi, if the desert is not destroyed, all 6 realms will be erased from existence. Do you really want to see it being ruined? Long Sai could not help but open his mouth. What does it have to do with me if it is ruined? Fan Qianshi was still stubborn. If I knew you would behave this way earlier, I wouldn't have saved you and would have left you behind to be eaten by those grievances. Lu Wu was angry and shouted at the man. Fan Qianshi answered it coldly. I never asked for you to rescue me. If you regret your decision, I am happy to step out of this shell right now. Lu Wu and Long Sai were speechless. Lu Wu really wanted to ask the muscle to open its shell and throw this bastard out. The mere sight of him was already unsettling. Fan Qianshi, this desert is now useless to you. Fui and I have already escaped from the prison, so your plan has failed. This desert cannot really trap us, and I can easily leave with him. Therefore, keeping this desert around is only hurting the innocent people from the 6 realms. Gu Shizhou tried to explain to him. Fan Qianshi was still cold. Have you heard a saying that something that hurts others is not necessarily beneficial to oneself? Everyone was speechless. Long Sai, Lu Wu, and even Little Black tried to persuade him. Nonetheless, Fan Qianshi was as stubborn as a stone. He would not tell them how to escape. Finally, Gu Shizhou asked, Fan Qianshi, tell us your condition. What do you want in exchange for the information? Fan Qianshi raised his eyebrows and looked at Gu Shizhou. Why don't you tell me? What offer can you give me? Gu Shizhou was stunned for a moment by his reply. If you can tell us the way to stop this catastrophe, we can forgive everything that you have done before. Even after Fui returns as master of the heavenly law, he will not look for revenge. Furthermore, you can continue to be the god of creation, as long as you promise not to harm the 6 realms in the future. This offer could be said to be very generous. With the sins that he had committed, this was definitely a big win for him. Based on what Gu Shizhou understood, the reason why Fan Qianshi was so ruthless to kill Di Fui this time was that he was afraid that Di Fui would punish and kill him after he returned as the master of the heavenly law. Huayan hesitated. Gu Shizhou, can you really make this decision on behalf of Di Fui? Chapter 3047. The Grand Finale 14. I know I can. Huayan immediately looked at Fan Qianshi and tried to persuade him, Master. To which Fan Qianshi replied, Shut up. You are not qualified to change my decision. Huayan's pretty face turned pale in an instant. She looked down and did not utter another word. The Black Candle Dragon could not help but give it a go. Master, what do you want this time? You told me before that a wise man would know how to make a judgment based on every situation. When it is your turn to be wise, why are you so stubborn? Is your brain damaged? You are usually not so stubborn. Fan Qianshi laughed at the black candle dragon, but his eyes did not seem to joke when he replied, "Unless you turn back time and treat me as a real apprentice, I will not be able to let it go. I am absolutely disgusted by how you used me in the past." Gu Shijiu was speechless. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi laughed even louder. "I know that you can't do it. So there is nothing else to be discussed." In the darkness, a deep voice could suddenly be heard. "You don't have to go back in time. She used to treat you well as her apprentice. In fact, she never used you. On the contrary, she did a lot for you." The voice was magnetically clear. It was very calming but also seemed slightly regretful. Everyone was startled by the sudden emergence of the voice. Gu Shijiu and Di Fui were both stunned for a moment as they felt that they could recognize the voice, but could not seem to put an image to it. "Who are you? Who is the one talking nonsense?" Fan Qianshi suddenly opened his eyes. The voice did not reply, but the muscle, that was busy drilling a path, suddenly screamed. Its huge body seemed to be sucked up the surface. Who is pulling me? Gosh, we are going up. We are going up quickly. Where is this? Did we drill out of the desert already?" The scenery was no longer in the endless desert. Instead, they could see the starry sky. The stars seemed to be sparkling in the night sky. In fact, these stars were not the real stars in the sky. They were like stones that carried a light with them. The place seemed vast and endless. Where was this place? Long Sai, Hua Yan, the muscle, Lu Wu, and the candle dragon were all stunned by the sight in front of them. They dared not speak at the moment. However, Fan Qianshi felt as though a hammer had repeatedly been pounding on his heart. It looked like the forbidden land of God. But was it possible? The forbidden land of God had long disappeared. How could it suddenly appear here again? It did not make any sense. Fan Qianshi's memory of his past life had not been fully restored. Nevertheless, he remembered the time when he and Di Fui came to this forbidden place, and that it had exploded. The explosion was too powerful that no one could stop it. When they realized that the place had been destroyed, it seemed that everyone had forgotten that Gu Shijiu was the god of creation. Fan Qianshi only remembered it later on, and almost vomited blood. The mere memory of it was enough to cause him great pain, and made him feel nauseous. Meanwhile, right after he woke up, he realized that he was the god of creation while Di Fui was the master of the heavenly law. From then on, both of them managed the beings of the 6 realms together. Perhaps because he had been too obsessed with Gu Shijiu, he started to dream about his past life, piece by piece. Slowly, he was able to put everything together about his past life. The first place he wanted to find was the forbidden land of God. However, it became clear to him that he could no longer find it. He started to doubt whether its existence was only a rumor, but seeing it now made him realize that it was not. Chapter 30-48. The Grand Finale 15. The man was certainly startled as he felt an unspeakable feeling of grief engulf his heart. Gu Shijiu was also startled for a moment. After she saw everything here clearly, her heart was drowned by a feeling of sadness, though she did not know why. The sadness was overwhelming to the point where she suddenly felt like letting go of everything. All these emotions seemed to have struck her at once, and she did not know how to disentangle it. She subconsciously turned to look at Di Fui for an answer, and noticed that his face was terribly pale. "Fui." She grabbed his arm, and Di Fui suddenly hugged her. When he was about to say something, the muscle suddenly uttered a cry. "The demon is here! The demon is here!" Everyone was shocked and subconsciously looked in the direction where the muscle pointed. They could not believe their eyes. A woman in white appeared out of nowhere, and seemed to be rushing forward along a star-like path. The woman certainly looked very similar to the demon, but everyone soon distinguished that this woman was not the demon that they had encountered in the desert, because this woman was covered with an auspicious aura. There was no evil aura around her. She was a divine being, not the demon. Fan Qianshi seemed to realize something as he suddenly stepped forward. "Master." Nevertheless, the woman did not seem to see him at all. It seemed that she did not know that anyone else was present either. She just continued her journey forward. Was this an illusion? Everyone looked at each other and followed the woman to see where she was going. There was a large and magnificent hall in front of her, surrounded by colorful light. It was clear to them that this was a temple of God. The woman appeared to have run straight into the temple and disappeared from sight. Gu Shizhou and Di Fui looked at each other first and naturally followed. Meanwhile, the muscle, Long Sai, Hua Yan, and others appeared to be blocked by a wizardry barrier, so they could not go any further. Fan Qianshi stopped in front of the entrance and contemplated this temple. It was the temple where he became the god of creation. He remembered that he seemed to have inherited a lot of skills and knowledge about the god of creation inside the temple. He was feeling very emotional in his heart, but decided to take a leap of faith and walk into the hall. Meanwhile, the mussel was wondering how it could enter the hall as well. It used its shell to try to break in, but it did not seem to be effective. Is this barrier specifically set to block us? How could they enter without any resistance? Later, it started to worry. Are we being left behind? Huayan seemed to realize something. Maybe it only admits the relevant people. Perhaps we are not qualified. Well, that sounded plausible. After all, out of the 3 people who entered, 2 were gods of creation, and the other was the master of the heavenly law. Long Sai sat quietly on the ground and said, "Let's wait for them here." Inside the temple, there was no furniture in the hall, only a vast array of stars that were arranged in a pattern. The woman turned left and right in a big circle, and finally put a beautiful stone-like moonlight into the array. Then she had sighed gently as she muttered, "Finally, it is a successful arrangement. After I immortalize, Qianshi will be able to inherit my abilities." Fan Qianshi's body froze, and his face turned pale upon hearing what the woman had said. Did she arrange this starry array? Was it not prepared by God, especially for God of creation? He knew that he obtained his abilities from this big array. He remembered that when he accidentally stumbled into the area, he was monetarily trapped. He could not seem to escape from it but also could not die. Just when he was exhausted to the point where his skin had almost peeled off, he finally got out from the array and possessed the abilities specifically set aside for the God of creation. Chapter 3049. The Grand Finale 16. He always thought that this array was created by God, especially for God of creation, but he never expected that his master explicitly designed this for him. It could not be true, could it? Perhaps all this had happened before she met Di Fui. At the time, she did treat him well, at least she treated him as her disciple. Furthermore, this might be an illusion that Di Fui specially created for him to trick him into revealing the solution to the desert. They would not fool him. Humph. He turned to look at Di Fui, but Di Fui was completely focused on the woman in white. His face was pale, and he did not know how to describe what was going through his mind. Gu Shizhou sat beside him, and her eyes were also locked on the woman in white. She seemed to be deep in her own thoughts. Was this her past life? In her past, it seemed that she had treated Fan Qianshi quite well. Even before she immortalized, she still thought about him and did this for him. Why did Fan Qianshi seek revenge on her the entire time, as if she ruined his family's grave? After the woman in white put down the big stone, she was a little bit tired. She sat down on a rock and looked around before looking back down at her own hands. She sighed and said, "I wonder if Qianshi has already hatched the baby candle dragon? Unfortunately, I am not going to be able to see it. In fact, I really want to see the little candle dragon. I hope that the little candle dragon is not as stubborn as he is." Her voice was soft and seemed to be filled with regret. She sat there with her hand supporting her chin, and seemed to think about something else for a moment before shaking her head. This kid is an absolute genius, but unfortunately he is too stubborn. Once he focuses on something he will never turn back, and to me he is... Sigh. I tried to correct him, but it didn't work. I deliberately ignored him and punished him because I wanted him to focus on his practice and quickly grow before I am immortalized. After that, I can't be with him any longer. At first, I thought of bringing him here before I immortalized to tell him about the taboos here. Unfortunately, he would not be able to survive here with his current abilities. It can only be like this for now. Fan Qianqi's face went pale. He was now focused on the woman as well. He opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Fake. She was fake. This was an illusion. It must have been created by Difui. He wanted to quickly cast a spell to destroy the confusion in his heart. The man had pinched his fingers together, but somehow struggled to utter the words that he needed to say. At that moment, the woman took out a jade piece. Fan Qianqi's eyes suddenly shrank upon seeing it. In fact, he felt as though something had crashed into his head. He recognized this jade piece at once. It was a beautiful jade that he had personally collected when he was young. As the jade looked like a human, he had an idea and carefully carved a jade statue of Gu Shijio. He clearly remembered that the jade statue was lifelike and had facial features that were just like Gu Shijio. He had kept it with him secretly for so many years. The man often held her jade statue when he missed her, but he did not dare to let her know about it. It was only when he was seriously injured one time that she accidentally discovered this jade statue when she was trying to heal him. She was stunned at the time, and Fan Qianqi's face had turned red. He was worried that Gu Shijio would get angry. Unexpectedly, she turned the jade statue in her hand and praised him. "Did you carve it for me? The carving is good. It seems like my apprentice has a pair of skillful hands. However, I think your first priority should be to practice. After you complete your practice, you can continue with these crafts, okay?" He responded with great courage. "Master, I feel that my skills are high enough. Master, do you think I am not strong enough?" Chapter 3050. The Grand Finale 17. Certainly not. In fact, you are far from being strong enough. Gu Shijio then shook her head before continuing. You must cultivate to the level of a great deity within 20 years, or else you should not even bother to tell anyone that you are my apprentice. Fan Qianshi remained silent. At the time, his kung fu was only at the primary level of a mighty immortal. Therefore, her expectations of him were obviously too high. He did not think there was a chance that he could achieve it. Nevertheless, she patted him on the shoulder and said, "Qianshi, I really think highly of you. Don't let me down, okay?" Then, she spun the jade statue in her hand and continued, "This jade statue will be your birthday gift for me. Remember, don't make this again in the future until you have achieved a higher level of practice. If I see it again, I will sentence you to kneel at the mountainside for 10 years. Do you hear me?" "Yes." Gu Shijio nodded at him to acknowledge his reply and left swiftly. However, she tripped along the staircase, and the jade statue in her hand fell to the ground and broke into 4 pieces. Fan Qianshi was stunned. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio could not help but sigh. It seems that even God doesn't want to see you make these things that waste your time. She then raised her sleeves and picked up the jade pieces before walking away. Fan Qianshi always thought that she had thrown away the jade statue. He never expected to see her having it in her possession now. His eyes were very sharp, and he noticed there were several cracks on the jade statue, indicating that it must be the same one that he had carved. The woman's fingertips rubbed the jade statue as she sighed. "This jade statue is so good. It looks just like me, but..." The man was almost out of breath now as he noticed a small star-like shackle at the earlobe that looked like it was a little tattoo. It was impossible to notice it without looking at it carefully. His heart continued to pound, and his limbs are turning cold and numb as the realization dawned on him. This statue was only seen by him and his master. He was certain that Gu Shijio would have never shown this statue to Difui in the past, especially since it was broken. Therefore, everything that unfolded was not an illusion. He looked at the woman in white and seemed to tremble. He suddenly stepped forward again to address her. "Master." This time, he also tried to pull her sleeves but was unsuccessful. The woman that he once loved and now hated was in front of his very eyes, but he could not touch her. It had been 100,000 years since he last saw her. In the illusion, the woman kept the statue away as she stood up and headed toward a platform in the starry array. With a finger on the platform, a row of manuals automatically appeared. Gu Shijio sat down and took out a scroll. She then lifted her pen to write something on it. Fan Qianqi's made up his mind quickly and stood behind the woman. The more he saw what the woman wrote, the paler his face became. She was writing the information needed by the god of creation using an old font. Moreover, it seemed that she put some of her powers into these characters as she needed to take a break every once in a while before she could continue. He knew about these books but did not know that his master wrote them. After his master immortalized, he learned some of the advanced techniques of the god of creation from these books. Since Gu Shizhou had not taught him these skills, he thought they were passed down from someone else. Fan Qianshi had stumbled upon these books when he last found himself locked inside this hall. When he opened the books, the contents of these books seemed to enter into his mind automatically. Chapter 3051. The Grand Finale 18. Besides this, there were even some mysterious skills that entered into his body and improved his abilities drastically. The moment he got out of the forbidden land of God, he had become the new god of creation. Since these books looked old, and he had never seen his master write in these fonts before, it never occurred to him that his master wrote these books. As the skills of the god of creation were obtained from these books, he thought that it was given to him by God. It was only now that he knew that it turned out to be his master's work that he inherited. He was wrong. In the end, it seemed that his master never did anything bad to him. She always regarded him as her apprentice, and even left all her skills to him before she immortalized. She did not leave it to Di Fui as he originally thought. He misunderstood the entire situation for so many years. His body was stiff, and his face turned really hot as he tried to digest everything that just happened. The man's head went light as he could not believe that all his efforts for revenge turned out to be a mistake. One thing was still unclear to him, however. What happened to Di Fui in the past? When Gu Shizhou died, why did his skills improve so significantly after he came out of the temple? Back in the illusion, the woman was still writing onto the pages of the book, but was a little tired. She rubbed her eyebrows and stood up for a moment. She looked at the book on the table and sighed. The kid is still not good enough. He can't come in at the moment. He has to wait for the candle dragon to hatch. With the help of the power from the candle dragon, he will not be hurt by the wizardry barrier in the forbidden land. I think he has to wait for a few more years before he can come in to inherit these things. Unfortunately, I can't see him becoming the god of creation. The worst part of it all is that this kid is too emotional. If he sees me die, he will definitely go crazy, so I had to assign him to hatch the egg while I immortalize. It would be better if he did not see me go. Sigh, I hope he won't hate me because of this. The woman had no outlet to speak her mind, so she just spoke to in the starry array, as if venting her emotions to it. She talked to herself and expressed everything in her heart. All the words felt like blows to Fan Qianshi. He stood there and repented his actions. At that point, it felt as if his cold heart was being splashed with boiling water. It was an indescribable feeling. It seemed to be extremely painful but also extremely warm, a mixed feeling of joy and despair. Countless emotions were intertwined in his heart, and made him involuntarily tremble. He stretched out his arm and wanted to hug the woman in the illusion. Master! His throat was dry, and his voice was rather hoarse. Of course, he still hugged the air since it was just an illusion. The woman that he had always wanted had long ceased to exist. What he saw seemed to be a projection in the temple playing everything that the woman in white had done inside the temple. Throughout the illusion, he saw that the woman in white had entered and exited the place several times. Every time she came, she tried to write more pages in the book. This process went back and forth until the day came. She rushed in on that day in the same outfit that the demon wore. However, this time, she did not write any notes but went directly to a starry array on the southeast side of the temple. Then she exercised a spell and gradually faded. He also saw Di Fui rush in like a madman who tried to break a wizardry barrier that surrounded the place, but it was all in vain. The man could not get in, and was only able to watch as the woman faded into fragments. The great feelings of sorrow made Di Fui awaken as the master of the heavenly law. Just like that, the death of the god of creation was presented to the three of them for the very first time. The temple was very quiet to the point where even the sound of a needle falling could be heard. Fan Qianshi was probably moved the most by the scene, But the impact on Di Fui and Gu Shijie was not irrelevant either. The three of them did not speak for a moment. Chapter 3052. The Grand Finale 19. Di Fui's face was pale as a sheet. Although he did not know the true reason, he saw that he had collapsed in the scene. He also seemed to feel the despair and regret that he had at that time. His heart trembled, and he held Gu Shijie beside him. In a hoarse voice he said, "Shijie, I am sorry." He apologized for his mistake in his previous life. Gu Zijie's emotions also fluctuated. She turned and hugged him, and shook her head slightly. "All has passed. We are good now." Yes, they were very good now. Anything suffered in the past had passed. Now they only needed to solve one problem. Di Fui looked at Fan Qianshi and said coldly, "It seems she did not do anything bad to you." Fan Qianshi was still staring at the place where the woman in white dissipated. He did not turn to look at Di Fui, but it was clear that his face was terribly pale. He repeated what Di Fui had said as though he was in a trance. "Yes, she did not do anything bad to me." Then he turned his head and looked at the two people who were hugging each other. In a second he quickly turned away. But now, a smile seemed to emerge on his face. "It seems that I was very wrong about the past." Even though he was smiling, his voice sounded like he was actually crying. He muttered, "It's all wrong." He started to regret all that he had done deeply. Nevertheless, he also knew that standing here and feeling sorry would not change anything. All of a sudden he charged toward the exit of the hall. Gu Shijie and Di Fui looked at each other and naturally followed behind him. Soon, the three of them left the shrine and disappeared in the blink of an eye. A moment later, two figures appeared in the center of the hall. One was a white-haired man wearing a robe with a splash of ink on light green silk. A starry sky picture could be seen on his robe. The man's attire seemed to flutter in the wind when he appeared, making the stars also seem to move around his body. His hair was like snow being tied up in a light blue hairpin. His facial features were stunning, but his eyes in particular were like stars and rivers. When he raised his hand, he looked like the ruler of the world. The other figure was a candle dragon. To be specific, it was a pink candle dragon. This pink candle dragon was gorgeous at about 70 to 80 feet in length. Its scales were crystal clear and transparent while its eyes were in a beautiful sea blue color. When it blinked, it seemed to stir the blue waves in the depths of its eyes. The small lantern on the head was also very unique. It looked like it carried the eye of God. "Were you successful?" The pink candle dragon looked in the direction where the three people left and asked. The white-haired man replied, "Half successful." His voice was so foreign and magnetic that it sounded as if it was coming down from the sky. Half. Fan Qianshi has already realized that he should go out and clean up the mess. He will not be partnering with the inner demon from now on. Besides, your father and mother will be collaborating with each other. Together, they should be able to destroy this desert. Why do you consider this only half successful? The pink candle dragon did not understand. The white-haired man stared in a direction where dark clouds rolled in. He knew that heaven and the earth seemed to be upside down and could not help but sigh. The demon is not just the inner demon of the former god of creation. Her soul has mixed too much with the fierceness of God. The degree of her treacherousness has made her evolve. She has privately changed some of the settings in the desert, and I am afraid that even Fan Qianshi will no longer be able to control her. The total grievances in the desert are close to 4 million now. With so many resentful spirits condensed together, it is enough to destroy the entire world. Can't you do anything? The pink candle dragon's eyes widened as it asked. You are the master of the heavenly law, right? Can't you just snap your fingers and solve the situation? Chapter 3053. The Grand Finale 20. The white-haired man did not answer its question but used his fingers to comb his own white hair before going off topic. Little Pink, do you think my hair makes me look handsome? Little Pink paused for a moment before replying. It's cool. You look great as the master of the heavenly law. The white-haired man shook his head slightly and sighed. The master of the heavenly law does not actually have white hair. In fact, my hair used to be black and shiny with hints of purple. Some might say that it was shinier than the galaxy. Unfortunately, I cannot let you see it. Little Pink's mouth was ajar. Why is it now white? In fact, it is pure white without any color mixed in between. Stupid. It is because my skills and energy have almost been depleted. Naturally, my hair will turn white first. I used all of my power just to project the past for them earlier. I only hope that the bastard will wake up. Little Pink was panicked by the word depleted. It looked at him with widened eyes and said, You are out of power? How come? I saw that when you were restored, you looked very powerful. Besides, you also helped me to expel the evil spirit out of my body and let me recover my original appearance. You made it look so easy. The white-haired man chuckled. Have you heard of the return light? Little Pink was stunned. The white-haired man faintly continued. I came here by chance and now, everything could be changed. Naturally, I should have disappeared already. This white-haired man was Dihao. He had a terrible time in the desert before finally restoring his abilities. The demon was vicious and wanted to take the opportunity to kill him, saying that he should not have come to the world because she wanted to have her own child with Difui. Thus, she planned for his other 2 children to die miserably. When she was about to kill him, Difui somehow managed to break her illusion and distracted her. In fact, she was so distracted that Dihao had the opportunity to escape together with the pink candle dragon. The demon did not give up and sent many grievances to hunt him in the desert. In the process of trying to get rid of the evil spirits, Dihao triggered something in his body that removed his childlike appearance and restored his former identity as the master of the heavenly law. Nevertheless, since the future had been changed so drastically, he estimated that he did not have much time left here. His remaining power as the master of the heavenly law was minimal too. His first task was to dispel 10,000 years of evil energy from Little Pink's body. Then he used whatever was left to cast the illusion of the forbidden land of God, and looked for an opportunity to pull in all the relevant people to this place. With his power truly depleted, the most that he could do now was to make himself invisible. He would not be able to handle the mess outside at this point. He closed his eyes slightly, and Little Pink grew quite worried looking at his pale face. Although he was standing still, there was a glimmer on his body that suggested he could disappear soon. Are you okay? Little Pink used his mouth to tug at his robe, but unexpectedly pulled nothing. Little Pink was stunned. You. Dihao looked at it and sighed softly. Little Pink, go and look for your master. Little Pink looked confused. Who is my master? The former god of creation, Gu Shijio. Little Pink's eyes were rather round at the minute as it stared at Dihao. Meanwhile, Dihao continued to speak. You were injured by your master and had been hibernating for 10,000 years. When you woke up, you forgot everything. However, under your subconscious mind, you found your way back to your original master. As a result, you found the demon. Unfortunately, she took advantage of you and used you as a guardian in the desert. That you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.